Hello and welcome to Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started. Our catalyzing statement is a successful entrepreneur inside of every business. Enjoy this module. Hello and welcome to Module 3, which is using rhythms to amplify time and success. And I have to tell you, this is personally something I put into my business pretty quickly when you first taught me about this. And I think it's a matter of degree. I think everybody has some rhythms in their business right now, but it's almost a default, like, oh, we probably should be doing that a little bit more often, or maybe we should do this a little bit more often, as compared to taking a step back, looking at your values, looking at your objectives, the things they've learned in the prior modules, and then saying, based on these things, what rhythms does the business need in an effort to be able to succeed and to amplify time and success, as compared to being reactive and kind of chasing your tail? You've got rituals and rhythms. So why don't you talk a little bit first abstractly about this whole premise or concept as a business principle?
Yep. I have learned that businesses are nothing more than a series of habits and calendars. Let me repeat that. Businesses are nothing more than a series of habits and calendars. And another thing I've learned, and you've heard me say this, is that good companies have good habits and good calendars, and bad companies have bad habits and bad calendars, and a lot of times no calendars.
What do you mean by calendars?
Well, if you look at a successful company that you interact with on a daily basis, and I don't care what company that could be. It could be Microsoft, if you're interested in that. It could be McDonald's. It could be a company that started as a one-person organization and grew, like a company like Federal Express. And these successful companies, and I want to point out right now that you have to look at yourself as a company. Whether you're a large company or you're a solo operator, I want you to think of yourself as a business. All companies, I don't care if it's Microsoft or General Motors, at one point it was a single person. So if I can get you to realize that you're a company first, you're an entity, even though you're a technician, or you may see yourself as a solo entrepreneur, you may see yourself as a doctor or whatever, you have to consider that you're a business first. So now let me simplify it and just talk about calendars. I had the good fortune of sitting on the board of a nonprofit organization that had been around for about 15 years. And every time I went to a board meeting, it was a very random occurrence of what would happen next, meaning when would our next board meeting be, when would our next planned event be, when would our next fundraiser be. And the organization plodded along and never really got any footing. And then I said, let me raise my hand and become the president of this organization. And what we decided to do is, on the very first day, I decided to have a retreat where the board would go away for 6 hours. And any one of us could do this. And what I decided to do was bring a calendar, much like the calendar that you'll get in your module. And we laid out the calendar that included all 12 months of the year, January 1st through December 31st, laid out by month. And I said to all the people on the board, there was 9 people, I said, let's figure out what the ideal year would be for this organization. And all of a sudden they started filling in some dates for recruiting events, fundraising, 2 annual parties that we had, and there was about 10 or 15 dates filled out. And I said, well, when do the invites go out to the parties? When are the board meetings? When are the committee meetings? When are recruiting meetings? What I found out is, after about 2 hours of talking about this, on virtually every single solitary date of that calendar, there was something filled in. And all of a sudden, the board got completely energized, and they got completely clear on what had to be done. And over the next several years, this organization that I was involved in grew and grew and thrived. And we started having ritualized things. And what I mean by that, our quarterly board meetings, rather than being random events, were on the 3rd Thursday of the quarter. So I knew at the beginning of the quarter on that third Thursday, that's when the board meeting was. And everybody's calendars we used Outlook at the time, but everybody's calendars had a certain rhythm to it. We knew when recruiting events were. We knew when social events were. We knew when spousal events were. We knew everything. And the organization began to have a heartbeat. And as I talked about earlier, good companies have good rhythms, bad companies have bad rhythms. And I don't care if you're one person or you're 100 people, you're 1,000 people. The more you can incorporate this heartbeat and these rhythms into everything you do, the less that you have to be involved in making sure everything gets done. Because as time goes on, people get used to the rhythm. And I'm going to use a personal example with Patrick. When you and I first got involved in our weekly mastermind calls, I remember the first conversation when the guys all got on the phone and their initial reaction was, I can't do this, 90 minutes every week. I've got other things going on. I travel a lot. It's Wednesday morning.
Right.
But after
and we're different time zones.
Different time.
If you remember, different time zones, and we were all entrepreneurs running our own businesses. So it was like, if it was that situation where there seemed to be conflicting activities, and that could be also true inside of a company, couldn't it? Where you've got different people who have different roles and responsibilities in that company. And then suddenly, you know, you need them all, though, to be kind of in a rhythm together, even though they're moving in different directions. So this is a perfect analogy, what you're describing. But the first thing we had to do was say, we're committed to this.
Right.
The first thing we say, hey, this is a commitment. It goes in our calendar. It's 90 minutes. And it was a, lack of a better term, hell or high water phenomenon, meaning that we don't miss. So the first thing I had to do was tell my assistant, because I travel 150,000 miles a year on airplanes, first thing, don't ever book me to be anywhere where I can't be on that call for that 90 minutes, because that becomes a priority calendar event that's rhythmic every single week that I'm committed to, and I'm committed to it because of the objectives that I had for myself personally and for my company and my career. So that was critical for that. And just committing to that, everything changed. And incidentally, because of the level of that commitment, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but because of the level of that commitment, saying, wow, because I'm a pretty ADD guy. I've got, you know, a couple of companies, I'm traveling a lot, I'm speaking all over the place, we've got a lot of employees, there's always a lot of pressures, et cetera, and I'm bouncing from one thing to the next, which I think a lot of people can understand who would be watching this program. But the bottom line is, the first time I said, I got an anchor here. There's one thing I'm anchored to, that I'm not going to allow something to preempt, that I'm committed to it when I'm sick, and that I don't book. In other words, I'm on that phone for those 90 minutes every single week. And it created a new habit within myself that I was able to now take that and say, well, then I can create a rhythm over here because it's important, and another rhythm over there because it's important. And suddenly I learned to start utilizing rhythms rather than energy bursts and things that pull me in directions to kind of decide how I'm going to spend my time, my days, my weeks, et cetera.
Right. And what I was going to initially talk about, and I'm glad you expanded on it, but do you remember initially when we got on that call, and I'm just using this one little example, but I want you to think about this for all areas of your life. It was a little difficult. Your spouse had to get used to it, your employees had to get used to it, but about 2 months in, everybody knew, this is my 90-minute slot for this purpose.
Right.
And when you look at your company and you start figuring out when are staff meetings, when are financial meetings, when are marketing meetings, when are strategy meetings, when are offsites, when are client visits, and you lay that out, you no longer have to run the business, because the heartbeat of the business becomes the calendar and the rhythms. And I want to introduce a new word here, rituals. Yeah. I didn't want to start with rituals, and I didn't want to even put it in the name of the module, but this is about being ritualistic, having rituals in your life. I want to expand it also into your personal life. I like goals, I like setting objectives, and it's interesting when, even on the phone when we talk, people will bring up a personal goal like, I want to improve my marriage. And that's a great goal. And somebody who's good at goal setting would say, well, you know, how are you going to improve your marriage, or don't you want to make it more specific? No, I'm just going to work on my marriage. But if you put that in the context of an objective, and more importantly, a ritual, a ritualistic objective, what if the goal was like this? Every Tuesday night for the rest of the year, from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, I'm going to have dinner with my spouse at Jimmy's restaurant in the back corner table. Your wife knows, your babysitter knows, your employees know,
Right.
your family knows, everybody knows. Now, if you had dinner at the same table in the same restaurant from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock every Tuesday night for the next 52 weeks, do you think the result would be that you improved your marriage? And the answer, of course, is yes. So what I want you to think about is how extremely successful people are able to get a lot of things done in their life. You've heard the quote, I'm going to repeat it. The difference between successful people and extremely successful people is extremely successful people say no to almost everything. But the opposite of that quote is they're saying yes to the important things. They're not having random things pop up in their calendar that they have to attend to. Their calendars are pretty well set. Now, something that's very important to talk about here right now is this. Whenever I introduce this concept to people, especially busy business people, the first thing I hear for the people that push back is this. They go, well, I'm not really that type of person. I'm not really a creative person. And you know what? They're right. There are creative people and there are left-brain people.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You have to embrace this type of thinking if you're going to have a larger organization and a more successful organization, whether you're right brain or left brain. And you know, if you think about, I don't know why this popped up in my head, but Michelangelo, obviously he was a famous artist that lived in Italy. This guy had an amazing amount of deliberateness when it came to getting things done in his life. Yes, he was creative, but if he didn't also have the discipline and deliberateness to get things done, then nothing would have happened that he created to make the world a better place in so many ways. And so I said that little piece because I want you to understand it's not relevant whether you're right brain oriented or left brain oriented. What's important is you want to build a successful company, a successful entity that has a heartbeat, that has rhythmic habits, and that everybody outside of you knows what their role is in that system.
And you know, I think what's really important, and you kind of said it quickly, I'm going to just repeat it, is that just the example of the Tuesday date night, the ritual of it. Think about it for a second. Suddenly now, all the people that need to be involved to make that happen successfully on a regular basis know it's going to happen. So you're not reinventing the wheel or having to re-coordinate every time you want a date night. In other words, if you're doing things in an ad hoc, random fashion, you have to re-coordinate, and that's where you're not leveraging time, you're not leveraging energy, you're depleting it, you're inefficient with it, as compared to saying, because think about it, I mean, listen, I have this experience, I think anybody who's married and is trying to do the things we're talking about has this experience if we take it into the personal realm, is that how many times it's been, hey, honey, you want to go out to dinner tonight? I got off of work maybe a little bit early or something. And it's like, oh, let me see if I can get a babysitter. Oh, you know, I can't get the babysitter. Oh, wait a minute, I got a babysitter. Okay, well, let me call the restaurant. Oh, the restaurant doesn't have a reservation this evening. And, you know, we can go on and on as compared to saying, you know what, Tuesday nights, you don't have to worry about, am I getting out of work early or not? It's ritualized. The babysitter knows you're coming. The restaurant knows you're coming. All the support necessary to make the thing happen efficiently is happening. And it's kind of counterintuitive in the sense that it's the opposite of what you might think. You might say, well, geez, you know, it seems so structured. I'm more of a random kind of a person. I'm more vibey. I like to be more spontaneous. When you have good calendaring and good rhythms and good structure or rituals in the way that Rick is describing, my experience after learning this, because I am one of those people that says, you know, I'm kind of spontaneous in nature, what I recognize is that it provides more freedom for spontaneity than before, because when I had to worry about, just using the example, oh my God, is the restaurant available? Oh my God, is the babysitter available? All that kind of stuff. Where's my room to be spontaneous? Where's my room to say, hey, it's all handled. I get to kind of be free-floating here for a few moments. I'm a slave to not having the ritual. So I just think that if you take that example and just think about what you're trying to get done. And I'll tell you another one that I added, which was a byproduct of what I've learned from you. Because I travel a lot, I'm a business owner, etc. Another issue that I had is coordinating with my wife. 3 kids, right? A lot of travel. My schedule is different every week in a sense that I might be flying here, I might be flying there, I'm not traveling this week. There are so many varying aspects to my life in the way that it is that the more I can kind of nail down and ritualize, the better. But it can't be fully ritualized every minute of every day. But getting together with my wife every Monday morning to cover the next 2 weeks so that we can look at the calendar together. What do we have going on? What are the kids' activities? What are my activities? What does she have to get done? What, just all the general nature things. But we used to have so much stress or additional stress in the marriage because it's like, oh, wait a minute, honey, I thought of this. You got to, and instead of saying, you know what, we're there with her, she's there with a notepad, we're in front of the calendar, we're going through everything that has to happen. And then as a result, we synced up. That Monday ritual of sitting for, usually it's 30 to 45 minutes, and it's in my Outlook calendar every Monday morning, so nothing else gets booked around it. Because before I learned rituals, I knew that was important, but my wife would say, hey, when do you want to get together? I'm busy right now. How about this afternoon? Oh, this afternoon was no good because the kids had an event. Okay, well, maybe let's try tonight. We're too tired tonight. Let's do it. Because it wasn't calendared and there wasn't a ritual, it happened on a hit or miss basis, and it was creating stress and strain. Once it became a calendared event and it became a ritual, suddenly the rhythm, as you used the word, the rhythm is there, and it's transformational. Now, I am convinced that right now you can probably think of multiple places in your personal or business life right now where this type of a ritual, this kind of a calendar event that goes in would have massively positive impact. And, the thing, Rick, that we'd be talking about this, even in the intro modules or wherever, it seems so simple. I mean, people are looking for these profound, deep, they're in a safe, that you crack open, and these are just these deep wisdoms that are so complex. This is simple stuff, but it's profound.
And the funny thing is no one ever talks about this stuff. Did you ever stop and consider how a massive multi-billion-dollar company whose name happens to be McDonald's allows itself and its franchisees to be opened by a 16-year-old person who can open that store in the morning, get the cash registers ready, have other 16-year-olds help them out, run the store for the whole day, and close it at the end of the day? Have you ever thought about what that's about? I'll tell you what it's about. It's about habits, it's about calendars, and it's about rhythm. And if you're going to leverage your life so that you can have a company that runs itself someday, and you don't have to be involved in putting out fires all the time, you have to take this seriously. This is unbelievably important. Let me take it to the next level for you. And I want to talk about managing a lot of relationships. I have, and I would encourage you to have, a list of 25 important relationships. Now, why do I do it that way? Because everybody in my company knows if one of these 25 people call, they're a priority. It doesn't mean I have to take care of them, but they're a priority. And I call that my VIP list, and it's 25 people. Now, I would encourage you to have a list of 25 people, or 20, or 30. Now, why am I talking about this? Because I have an Excel spreadsheet, which you're going to have, that goes along with this module. And on the bottom, it just has everybody's name. And just for the sake of examples, on the bottom, the tab says Mary, Patrick, John, Christy, whomever. And that tab, when I click on it, I list everything I need to talk to Patrick about. Rather than I got to talk to Patrick about something and picking up the phone and leaving a voicemail and waiting for him to call me back, I know right now at this very moment, because I looked at it before we started filming, I've got 7 things I need to talk to Patrick about. Guess what? I write them down in the tab under Patrick, and when Patrick and I have our normal, ritualized weekly call, that's when I talk about the 7 things. I can manage these important 25 relationships by when I think about telling them something, including my wife, I put it right there on my wife's tab, so when we have our ritualized weekly meeting, I've got everything I need to talk to her about right there. How is this important, and why? It's important because the people that you're interacting with are like, wow, nothing slips through the cracks, they're thinking of everything, they're organized, they're straightforward. And doing it this way is how you amplify your success. If you go back and look at the title of this section, How are you as a successful person going to do more with less? How are you going to earn more? How are you going to have more? How are you going to get more done? You're going to do it by ritualizing your calendar. Even if you're a right-brained or left-brained person, it doesn't matter. So let's talk about really getting this down pat and talk about some of the things that we can ritualize. If you want to lose weight, start a workout program, whatever. I find, and I do this to this day, my trainer comes and meets me 3 days a week at the exact same time on the same days. Why is that important? My wife knows it, my kids know it, people in my life know it, they know when my trainer is going to come. Could you imagine, as busy as we all are, to leave things like that to randomness and expect results? It doesn't work. When you go back and flip into your business life, you want your employees to know when are the weekly meetings, when are the daily meetings, when are the client meetings, when are the marketing meetings, when are the financial meetings. I had an executive in my business that just would not wrap his brain around this concept. It took about 2 years for this person to understand. You and I have a lot to talk about. I need you for 2 hours every week. And I want it to be the same 2 hours every week. I want it to be every single Wednesday from 1 to 3 in a conference room with a whiteboard. I want to meet you. And this person complained, you don't understand business. This is such a pain in the butt. I've got to come down to the office sometimes when I'm out. Do you know that about 2 years into it, this person loves it? They said, I've never experienced anything like this. We're getting so much done because they had to alter their brain to say, wait a minute, I can also create a list of everything I want to talk to Rick about, and I could save it for that time, and we could cross-pollinate, and we could create, and we could do a lot. And that is how people like Richard Branson can run 350 companies. You compartmentalize, you ritualize, and you leverage.
We've learned about values, we've learned about catalyzing statement. How do you take these concepts for this module and tie it back into those?
I'm glad you asked that, because if you look at your values, and let's talk about the people that you value most. If you're married and you have children, if you're religious and you value church, let's just talk about some of those things. So someone who's very religious and likes to go to church every week, clearly that's a ritualized thing that you do, no pun intended. But you're going to go to church typically at the same time every week. And what happens is, if you get out of that rhythm, then typically you go south as it relates to that particular value. Let's talk about children. The most successful parent-child relationships that I've ever seen, including mine when I think about with my dad as a little boy, was and is when parents spend ritualized time with their kids. For example, every single evening, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm going to do your homework with you from 7 to 8 o'clock at night. Every Saturday morning, we're going to play ball in the backyard. Every Sunday, we're going to go to church together. You know, you can ritualize your relationships with your kids. And so why am I bringing that up? Because if you look at your values, and I have 9 personal values, I try to put a ritual around each value. Because if you don't ritualize your values, you won't focus on them. So I wanted to make sure you get that. So when you go back and look at your previous module over values, you're going to see all of your values. And part of the homework on this particular module is for you to incorporate a ritual around each of your values and each of the important people in your life, so you can have it on your calendar. Even if, and this is important for people to know, because you're probably feeling overwhelmed right now, even if it's a ritual that happens once a year. It doesn't have to be weekly.
Right.
It doesn't have to be daily. And that's why I started this module off with that annual calendar, that as an entity, you can fill in all the dates. Guess what? Your family is an entity. Why not ritualize vacations, ritualize family dinners, ritualize family meetings, ritualize when you talk about values with your kids, ritualize when your kids play together, ritualize when you watch a movie, Friday night, movie night every night. These are important things.
When we launched this project, first thing you did is on East time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, Wednesday mornings, the team that's responsible for this project is on the phone every single week, right up to this moment. So it's been months now, because this is a pretty big project. A lot of people involved to bring this to you, a lot of considerations. And everybody had other things they were working on. And the first thing you knew is that we need a rhythm and a ritual to bring this to the world on time, in budget, etc., and to do it in the way that we want to do it, not hysterically and just getting something out there, but doing it in the right way. So we ran this project every Wednesday. We're on the phones. We have that's in the calendar. The spreadsheets, with everything that has to happen. We talked about our catalyzing statement, the values, what we're trying to get accomplished. All this stuff was there, and it's why this is why you're watching this right now, because we practiced the values that we've been teaching here. We're practicing the different ideals that we've been teaching here. But one of the critical ones, which it might seem obvious, but people don't do it. The critical ones is we ritualize the team to get together and push this project every single week. And incidentally, think about it from the employee side of this. If an employee knows, if you're managing by objectives, which you've already learned, and an employee knows that there is a rhythm and a ritual to when they have to meet, and they're going to be asked, did you get X done? They know the meeting is coming. They have then, therefore, a deadline to say, I better get this done because I don't want to show up on the phone and say, no, we're not done, right? So I think that, just to give an example from our own personal experience in delivering this business to you, we've run this exact system, and it's worked very effectively and very efficiently.
Right. And I want to add to that, because what Patrick is talking about is an extremely creative process. Coming up with this program for you has a lot of creativity associated with it. But until the left brain is employed and rhythm and system and habit is added to the creativity, only until that happens does a product come forth. Now, I have to add another project that I've been working on for a long time. I have a co-author on a book that I'm currently writing with him. And for months, he talked about this idea of a book. In fact, he had an idea for years, but he had never worked with somebody who was left brain oriented. I said to him, well, let me look at my calendar. Let me find the ritualized time that we can talk. On the very first call that we had, we decided to delineate roles. I was going to handle these specific things. He was going to handle these specific things. It took him a few weeks to get used to it, and the book is born. It's been unbelievable. So I promised you that we were going to talk about leverage, we were going to talk about probability, and we were going to talk about simplicity. And that is what this is all about. You can't leverage yourself until you're ritualizing things. I know as an entrepreneur and a business owner, and Patrick knows as an entrepreneur and business owner, that we have incredibly busy lives. I also know that people don't realize how hard you work. People have no idea what it's like to be burdened with the drive of being a business owner. It's immense. It is hard. You're constantly putting out fires. I also know as a business owner that it's extremely hard to change pre-programmed ways of being. But this is a habit that I really would like you to embrace, because you're going to start to see so much more happen in your life as a result of embracing this. Don't push it off as something that you already know about, or something that you're already doing, or something that you're not oriented around doing. If you want to have true leverage and true success and increase the probability of those things being achieved in your life, you've got to embrace this philosophy. I want to say one more thing. There is a huge gap, and I want to exaggerate a little bit and say it's wider than the Grand Canyon, between people who really understand this, and people who don't. It's a massive gap, and the gap consists of true success in all areas of life and struggle. And if you could jump over that Grand Canyon and ritualize your life and have things fit in nice, tidy boxes, so when you're working on getting things done, you know when you're doing it, people in your life know when it needs to be achieved, your business is run in a more rhythmic fashion. Again, think about the 16-year-old who's responsible for McDonald's being such a phenomenal success over the last 50 years.
The fact that you're watching this right now is the sign of a ritual. hopefully a habit. If you watched our orientation video, what did we tell you? Put this in your calendar, watch it. We've been sort of beating a dead horse, meaning over and over again we keep talking about the virtue and implications of rhythms and these habits or rituals and calendaring them. So at this point, I think we've really driven the message home, and you already in your mind are thinking, or maybe even right now writing furiously, the varying things right now that you are going to ritual in your life, the rhythm you're going to create, the calendar item that you're going to put in, and the fact that you're going to have a discipline that you follow. Well, now it's time to talk about our applications for using rhythms and habits to amplify success. And as always, we may be repeating some of what we talked about in the last section when we talk about how to apply it. And Rick, this is, I think, like all of these things, it's life-changing, and it has phenomenal impact. But when you get into a rhythm, and I think you've all felt rhythms before. I think we've all had either gotten into them accidentally when we knew we were in flow and rhythm, and then we also know when we're out of them, when we feel like we're fighting uphill all the time and getting nowhere. So the applications are important, and it's critical, I think, number one, to start with the calendar.
Yep.
So let's talk about using the application of the calendar now.
Okay. So when you're done listening to this module, you'll see, in addition to the regular implementation guide, we've added some bonus items. And one of those bonus items is the calendar to use to lay out your life. And what you want to do is have every single date in the calendar filled out with something. When you work out, when you go to church, if you go to church, when you want to write your book, you want to space that out and lay it out. When you meditate, if you meditate, when you have employee meetings, you could have the same, every Friday at 9 o'clock. I'll meet with my employees to talk about an issue in the office, and my office hours are from 9 to 10. I have found that by having my entire calendar ritualized, it gives me an immense amount of freedom. Now, most people say, well, how does that give you freedom? Because what happens is the company and the employees and your children and your spouse and your friends know what your life is about and what's happening. They know, as an example for me personally, that I work late every Wednesday night. In fact, I work till 11 o'clock at night every Wednesday. My wife knows, my kids know, my family knows, my friends know. That's just my time to think and write, and if I need to meet someone for a social event, I do that. But almost every aspect of my life is ritualized. And when you have this calendar laid out, you've got every date of the year laid out, you're going to start to think about your life from a whole new perspective. You can even ritualize free time. I have a coach who told me, Rick, you need more free time, and he made me put in my calendar 4 hours of free time a week to do whatever I want. And sometimes I walk to the park across the street from my office. I have ritualized when I call my wife, when we have date night, when I spend time with my child, when I read to my child. All of that is ritualized. Could you imagine, I want you to imagine if companies weren't ritualized. Imagine if you went to the airport and you showed up and you went to the American Airlines clerk and you said, hey, when's that flight going to LA? And they go, I don't know, it just depends when enough people come and maybe we'll have a flight go out. Could you imagine if Federal Express said, it's not really when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, it's just when we feel like sending it. Think about it. Companies that start small with one person, and a lot of people don't realize it, but almost every company that exists started with somebody with an idea. The ones that made it, the ones that became thriving enterprises, the ones where the owner doesn't have to be there all the time driving, they have rituals, they have systems, they have processes, they have habits, and the owners back away and let the company run itself. That's what this is all about. You could apply it to your business life, and you could apply it to your personal life. And the implementation guide has so many tips and tricks and tools, one of which I'm going to share with you right now. I have a lot of people that I have to deal with, and so rather than me have to remember everything that I need to tell somebody like Patrick, what I've included in the downloads for this module is something I call a conversation tracker. and it's an Excel spreadsheet, and each tab you could put somebody's name in your life. You could put your wife's name, your CEO's name, your head of sales, whoever you interact with often. And every time I think of something I need to tell Patrick or my wife or my CEO or my lifetime assistant, I put it on their tab. So the next ritualized time that I meet them, for example, Patrick and I have a standing call every week. I don't have to call and text and email Patrick every time I have something to tell him. I just type it on my conversation tracker, which you now have, and voila, everything is there. It's ritualized. He does the same thing for me. So when we're talking at one time per week, we're cross collaborating. It makes life so much easier and more leverageable.
I think one of the most important rituals to apply is the morning ritual. Many people refer to this as the power hour. Actually, mine has now gotten streamlined where maybe it only takes about 30 minutes or so. But how you start your days sets the tone for that whole day. And it's got to be a pattern because you rely on these things. The busier you are, if you're watching this, you're very likely an entrepreneur. You might be a large-scale one, a small-scale one, but you're somebody who's in business. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things to keep track of, a lot of people to talk to, as Rick was just talking about, and trying to track all those things. But ultimately, what's of critical importance is that you have a daily ritual that you are disciplined to, that you are accountable to every single morning. And for different people, you'll describe how that will be. I've talked about this before. But in general, it's looking at your tasks, looking at your projects you got going on, looking at your calendar for that day and what you've got going on. And there's a whole application of how to do this. But before you jump into that, at least a recommendation for me, a best practice, if I can give you one here, is you need to start out first by reading your catalyzing statement. If you have an affirmation, you read that. Meditate or contemplate what you're grateful for in your life. I think these are all elements of that first half hour or hour when you get up in the morning before you launch into your day, because you want to be in a proactive mode, not in a reactive mode. Death, here is a really bad ritual, and it's usually a default ritual. You get up in the morning, you turn on your computer or grab your smartphone, and you look at emails. Instantly, you're in reaction mode. You're reacting to what's on the email as compared to starting your day with clarity, focus, vision, and then organizing it into what tasks you're going to do, what things are on your schedule to achieve that day. And then after you go through that ritual, it should include, in my mind, also something that's healthy to eat. It should include exercise. This is all a part of a pattern that you follow that powers you up for the day so you get the most out of that day. So there's no one size fits all. You know your life. But I will contend that one of the most important rituals that you can hold is your morning ritual, how you get your day started every day.
And to add to what Patrick is saying, once you get into the office, or once your employees get into the office, if you don't work at your company, you want your office to have rituals. What I love to do, and what I've seen successful management teams do, is something that Vern Harnish taught me. And it's something called the 10-minute daily huddle. And what you do is you take your executive team, or your executive team after that meeting takes their direct reports, and they have a daily huddle that's 10 minutes long. And what we do internally is we go around the room and we say, how are you doing on your 5 objectives? And each person lays out how they're doing on their 5 objectives, not only for the quarter, but for the week. We break it down from quarter to week. And you'll see that when you look at the downloadable forms from the modules. You'll see that we have one for each employee to put in their weekly and even their daily top 5s. So to review this part, we go around the room and we say, how are you doing on your 5 objectives? And each person talks for a minute or 2. And you want to have it no more than 7 or 8 people. Then at the end of the meeting, we say, what roadblocks are you facing right now to get your job done? And 1 or 2 people will say, well, I'm having a real issue with X, Y, or Z. And what happens is very quickly, those problems get resolved. Rather than waiting for one employee to call another employee, things get resolved quickly. And it's amazing how much you could resolve before 9 a.m. at a company. Other companies who don't have these rituals in place, Sometimes it's 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and the two people that could have solved it in 1 minute haven't connected yet. Why? Because they spend their whole day reacting. So I believe that every single aspect of your company can be ritualized. Look at when you hire people. Instead of just randomly reacting to interviews, you can say, we're only going to hire people on the last month of each quarter, and we're going to spend the first week gathering resumes, and the second week doing phone interviews, and the third week doing in-person interviews, and the fourth week doing offers. You could break down anything to a ritual. McDonald's became McDonald's, whether you agree with their product or not, because Ray Kroc knew early on, we've got to ritualize everything in the company. And what you'll find is that all these companies that you like and that you interact with, I don't care if it's Starbucks or Apple or Walmart, they have rituals. Sam Walton said one of the most important attributes or one of the most important reasons that Walmart became Walmart, and they currently do over $350 billion in annual revenue, is every week they fly all their managers to one location and they do a weekly meeting, a ritual on a Saturday. Think about that. These people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars fly into this little town in Arkansas. Why would Walmart spend billions of dollars to keep that ritual alive? Because it makes the company operate like a heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. Don't you want your life to be that way, where it happens and it's predictable? And even the unpredictable parts of your life can be ritualized. You could say to your spouse or your friend, every Friday night, let's do something crazy. Make that a ritual. I hope that this point is being hammered home, and I hope that you really take the implementation guide seriously and you implement everything that's in there, because this will make a difference.
As you notice, or at least hopefully you're noticing now, there's a method to the madness. In other words, the rhythms and rituals you create should be based upon the objectives you have. And the objectives that you have should be based on the values that you have. So that's why we start with value-based decision making. We go to management by objectives. Now it's time to put rhythms and rituals in place that honor those things. And what's that quote that you like, Rick, that you'd like to share?
This quote has changed my life because I think about it often, and it's in my personal declaration sheet that I keep, which is a sheet that has all of my values, all of my objectives, and all of my favorite quotes. And here's the quote: good companies have good rhythms and habits, and bad companies have no or very few rhythms and habits. And it's so counterintuitive because we think as a business owner and an entrepreneur, we want freedom. But there's freedom in having these rituals. That's why massive companies could have minimum wage employees doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because they've ritualized everything. One thing that I want to be sure that you do with your employees, and I do it, it's been very powerful, is the ritual of this. At the beginning of every quarter, I sit down with each employee individually that reports to me, and we go over their 5 quarterly objectives. What do they want to get done? We make sure that those goals are smart, and we make sure that they align. And then at the end of the quarter, we do another meeting. How did you do on your quarterly objectives? And we set new quarterly objectives every quarter, like a heartbeat, as we talked about. This is powerful. You want your employees knowing what they're being held accountable to, and knowing what the results are for the company and for everyone else, and what the reward is, most importantly. One more quick story to share that I love. About 16 or 17 years ago, a very good friend of mine said he wanted to be a professional comedian. So he lived in New York City, and he would go to comedy clubs on amateur night. And he was real excited because he was good in front of the audience. He had total presence. People loved him. They laughed. And the interesting thing was he did different jokes every time, depending on how he felt and how the crowd was. Well, one of the greatest stage comedians of all time is Jerry Seinfeld. And my friend was so excited, he went to a club in New York City to see Jerry Seinfeld perform, and it was flawless. The crowd loved it. Jerry Seinfeld hit the ball out of the park. Well, about a year and a half later, my friend happened to be in Las Vegas, and lo and behold, Jerry Seinfeld was playing. And my friend called me back after the show to tell me something that changed his life. He said, I couldn't believe what I saw. Here was the greatest comedian in the world, or in his opinion, one of the greatest comedians in the world. And his performance that night was exactly identical in every way. Every burp, every pause, every mistake, every stutter, every joke, everything was exactly the same. Even the things that he thought were flubbed lines were exactly what they were a year and a half before. Now, why would the greatest comedian in the world, in his opinion, and all of us could agree Jerry Seinfeld is great, why would he do the exact same rhythmic presentation a year and a half later? Because it works. And that's what we're trying to get across to you here.
And that's what rituals are all about. You know, another application that could be considered here, if you're a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer professional, or a retailer, but anybody who has customers that have a consistent or a routine experience with you, which most businesses have. You're interested in increased customer retention, patient retention, what have you. You need to ritualize the customer, client, patient experience. So it's not a matter of saying, okay, well, we do the best we can every time they show up. We know that there's going to be a first time that they visit you, a second time they visit you, a third time they visit you. This is also true even of internet businesses when people are coming back to your site over and over again. So you want to have prescribed a ritual to what occurs in that customer experience every single time they come across you. Many times it's educational in nature. Okay, it's visit 1 for this customer or patient, we're going to teach them about this. It's visit 2, we're going to teach them this. It's visit 3, we teach them this. Doesn't leave anything to the imagination. You understand what the objective is. We want our customers to understand X. Okay, we want the average customer to come in X amount of times or Y amount of times. That means we have to give them this bit of information, day 1 or the first experience, this one on the second experience, this one on the third experience, and you create a pattern or a ritual for information dissemination that is documented, and that means that any employee can know this is the third visit for this one, this is what I have to say to them, or this is what I have to give to them on this particular visit. So you start to see that you can structure your rhythms and your rituals not just for yourself, not just for your employees, but also for your customer experience, for any variety of things. And the rhythms go, from daily, rhythms and rituals to weekly ones, to monthly ones, to annual ones, quarterly ones, everything in between. Obviously, you have to take a step back now and say, what is my business? What is it that we desire? What are our objectives? What catalyzes us? What's our catalyzing statement? And now, what rhythms and rituals should I implement? And I got to tell you, this, out of most of the things that we teach, at least in my experience, could be the most overwhelming. My God, I mean, there's just so much. What you have to do is say, hey, version 1.0 is to put 3 or 4 in place. Version 2.0 is going to put another 3 and 4 in place. And it's a year from now that maybe now you say, wow, we got all our rhythms and rituals figured out. Don't get paralysis by trying to say I have to figure them all out day 1. Figure out what the most important things are that you could be doing right now as far as your rhythms and rituals. Put them in place right away, and then add version 2.0, 3.0, and you'll keep upgrading that over time. When Microsoft Word came out, or any of these programs that you might utilize in your life, they didn't have 1/10 of the features they have right now, but they had enough features for them to launch, and then they kept adding features along the way.
And interestingly, I walk in a lot of businesses, and I see that even the most simple things have no rhythms or habits associated with them. And it's funny, I at one time had a phone center with a lot of people on the phone. And it was very interesting. We train them when somebody calls, the first thing you say, hi, this is Rick. You say your name. And the next thing you say is, who am I speaking to? And you write that person's name down. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been inside a company and they just go, hi, thank you for calling Acme. Can I help you? And now you don't know the person's name and they don't know who they're speaking with. I had so many customers telling us how friendly our people were on the phone. And they weren't friendly. They just asked the person's name right off the bat as a ritual, and they gave their name right off the bat. And they used that person's name over and over and over. Yes, Mr. Smith. Thank you for calling, Mr. Smith. Let me see if I could put you on hold and find what you want. And then they pick the phone back up. Mr. Smith, here's what I have for you. And the point is, it was a ritual. rather than most companies, when they answer the phone, the last thing the person wants to do inside your company is even be on the phone. Why are you calling? What do you want? Okay, let me see what I can do. And they want to get off the phone really quick. Why not habitualize being nice and friendly on the phone? So there's little things and there's big things. And to Patrick's point, you want to do, if it's overwhelming, do the small things, the little things first, do a few first. But eventually, you want to get to the point where you are out of your business and habits and rhythms are in your business. That's what they mean when they say work on your business, don't work in your business.
At this point, I think you've got enough context now to be able to go to the implementation guide, use it for everything it's worth, because there's a lot of rich content there, and that's where the rubber meets the road. So we're going to be pounding in over and over again. Don't just watch the videos, watch the videos, go to the implementation guide, and start implementing these things that you're learning module by module here at Business Finishing School. So again, thank you so much for being a part of this cause. We're very excited about energizing entrepreneurs out there to get them to succeed at higher and higher levels. Thank you for watching this module of Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started.